Kenora, Ontario. This is cottage country for many Winnipeggers. A year ago, a young First Nations girl disappeared here. Her story is sadly similar to hundreds of others across the country, but the story of how this community reacted is different. Delanie Copenace was a 16-year-old Anishinaabe girl, a shy teen. She loved animals, all kinds of music, and video games.
Such a wonderful kid. She was very loving, very silly all the time. She loved art. She was a very good artist. This one's her version of the Joker and Harlequin.
The
Like,
bunk
this is
beds
Joker at
Delanie
the back
shared with
here,
her twin
and this
are
is
gone.
Her most favorite one was obviously Pikachu.
But for her mother, Anita Ross, reminders of Delanie are everywhere.
She had so many dreams. I know she wanted to be a video game designer. I believe at one point she wanted to be enlist in the army and things like that.
But on February 27th, 2016, those dreams ended. Delanie Copenace disappeared.
If you know where my daughter is, please do the right thing and let her come home to her family.
The search went on for nearly a month. More than 100 volunteers combed the woods while Ontario Provincial Police flew above. It ended when her body was found weeks later in Lake of the Woods. A year later, her family is still struggling with its grief.
We really miss her a lot, you know. Our house is not the same without her. There's a different kind of silence, you know.
Grief fuels Anita Ross's desire for answers. According to the coroner's report, Delanie's death was an accident. She drowned. But many things remain unexplained, including marks the coroner found on her arms and legs.
I know my daughter didn't have bruises when she left the house. There'd be no reason for her to walk a complete different direction to go home. There'd be no reason for her. She was not depressed. She was not suicidal. There'd be no reason for her to go out to the ice.
We had people everywhere searching.
It's a sentiment echoed by others who took part in the search. With so many people looking for her, why did it take almost a month to find Delanie?
The shoreline's here, all along there. The shoreline's here, the streets, the hills, the tracks, those big hills. I mean, we were everywhere. We had volunteers combing every single place you can think of.
Daryl Redsky led the teams looking for Delanie, a task he's performed many times before. This is not a new story in this part of the world.
I see a lot of anguish. I see a lot of hurt. I see a lot of pain in the mothers, in the aunties, in the grandmothers that come and ask for our help.
On March 22nd, the search for Delanie ended in a way that surprised Redsky and shocked her family. After nearly a month of searching, Delanie's body was found here off the dock. It's just meters from the provincial police station in downtown Kenora. Delanie's death opened old wounds in a place where the natural beauty hides an ugly history. From the early 1900s, there were 3 residential schools in the area. Many children tried to run away. Some died. Few locals seemed to notice the tragedy unfolding in their town. From oppression came resistance. Racial tensions flared. In 1974, the occupation of Anishinaabe Park brought international attention as Indigenous people fought for fishing rights, access to education, and better living conditions. That struggle continues today. Kenora remains a city divided between haves and have-nots. For decades, neighbors have found it hard to talk about Kenora's troubled history. But with the search for Delane and her death came a new conversation. Those discussions started here, in a place that hasn't always felt welcoming to Indigenous people. Most parishioners have lived in Kenora for years, comfortably but separate. Last year, this church became headquarters for the search. Fred Richardson was one of the first to get involved.
I'll be quite honest with you, there were some congregational members that didn't think it was a good idea. They didn't think it was never been done before. It was something different. They didn't feel it was appropriate. But after it was all said and done, I can't imagine anyone not being on board with what we did.
They all had helium balloons, and they wrote messages on those balloons.
Meg Illman-White, a minister at Knox United, remembers the way Delane's death rippled through the community.
When somebody goes missing, when something tragic happens to somebody that's young, we try to distance ourselves from that. We try to put up a barrier that says this can never happen to me. So we make all kinds of explanations about how that might be the fault of someone else. But the truth is, it can happen to us.
That distance between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people began to shrink as the community first claimed Delane as their own and then shared in the grief of her loss.
It's so essential, so necessary, and if we can do that at least, then things begin to change. Maybe begin to change so that other kids don't go missing.
Yeah.
For some parishioners like Miriam McDonald, it was even more than that.
Delane became one of ours. And how people, the family, embraced us was, it was wonderful. It was historical.
The mystery of Delane's death continues to be on the mind of community leaders like Daryl Redsky. But the solidarity built in this divided town points to signs that things may be changing.
For the church community to step up and open its doors, I think they did very well in terms of opening up those doors to the community, because both communities came together, both sides, the Feather and the Bible, were together.
Building relationships are important for Anita Ross, but so are answers. For the past year, she has pursued her relentless quest for information about how her daughter died.
I believe she was hurt before she died. And I try hard not to imagine what it was like for those last few minutes of her life.
Nearly every day since Delane's death, she's come here, often with Lori, Delane's sister, to grieve the loss of a precious girl. And she's grateful so many others in Kenora are willing to share the burden of that loss, some helping to raise money for a headstone. A year to the day that Delanie Copenace disappeared, the healing whisper of jingle dresses leads the community on a walk in her memory. We love you, Delanie! Kenora can't erase its past, but in coming together to grieve, the whole community is shining a light on the possibility of a different future. Jody Porter, CBC News, Kenora, Ontario.